Okay, we'll call our meeting to order. Thanks everyone for being here, and now I'll ask Ms. Reyes to please call roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Bryant,
Here.
Commissioner Elliott,
Here.
Commissioner Madrid,
Here.
George Jones,
Here.
Cliff Martin,
Here.
Commissioner Lovett, Gene Porter,
Here.
and Randy Petty.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Move down to the approval of the minutes of June 23rd. Hopefully everybody's had the opportunity to look these over. I will entertain a motion for approval whenever you're all ready.
Not that it's a big deal, but I was in attendance that meeting.
Oh, okay.
Has me down as absent.
Okay, we'll make that note.
I move for approval.
Okay, we have a motion to approve.
Second with the change.
Okay, we have a second. That's with the change. And all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Same with those opposed. Motion carries. Okay, we'll move down to discussion and recommendation regarding residential street paving. And we'll start the conversation off with Mr. Bunch.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Excuse me. As you all know, a couple meetings ago, I solicited some ideas for some street paving. Got with each one of you, asked, what areas might need to be done in your districts. I've got some limited responses, but I also got with our street superintendent, Larry Hall, and asked him to go out and check some areas also. The handout you have in front of you is our recommendations of areas that need to be repaved. If you look at residential paving district number 1, we have Ensdale from Colonial Parkway to Fairway Terrace North. We have Fairway Terrace North from Ensdale to Colonial Parkway, and we have Lakeview from Fairway Terrace North to Colonial Parkway. The total for that is approximately $287,000. We know that we will not be able to do that much in each district, but we're narrowing it down to these areas, and from this we'll pare it down to fit our budget, which is a $700,000 budget we have right now. We'll do what we can and do the worst areas first, and then we'll worry about the next year we'll worry about the rest of it that needs to be done. In District 2, we decided that 4th Street from Prince to Axtell, 5th Street from Prince to Axtell, and 6th Street from Prince to Axtell needs to be resurfaced. The worst area is 5th Street by the Pepsi Cola plant. The trucks that turn in there have made it where we're always in there patching and doing something on 5th, so that'll be one of the areas we do first to make sure that area is in good shape so that it can handle the truckload. As you see, that total there was $336,000. Of course, we won't be able to do each one of those roads, but we will definitely want to get 5th Street first in that area. District 3, we decided to look at Beta from 7th Street to Deborah. That area we've worked on many times. We put a temporary chip seal on that area, but we're still in there patching quite a few times. It is a long stretch. That area, excuse me, would approximately cost $263,000. What we'll do is we'll do that in phases. We'll do the worst part with this money from this budget, and then, like I said, next budget we'll worry about another phase. In District 4, we picked 4 different areas, all of them on Lower Street. One of the recommendations we had was Lower, and it is in this district. So we will probably be repaving that section this year and head to the north from there. That's from Eccles and head north from there. So that will be on the list this year. Like I said, this list that I come up with comes up to about 1.2 million. We have about $700,000 to spend, so we'll pare it down from here, but this will be the areas that we'll be in for the residential paving. I got with K. Barnett Construction, and I came up with these numbers from a $24 a square yard number. That is to reclaim the roadways, tight blade them back in, and repave them with 2 inches of hot mix. So they will be brand new roadways. There'll be nothing done on the curb and gutter or sidewalks. This is strictly road repairs. If you look at your back couple pages, there's one problem area that I'm going to have to use approximately $9,000, maybe $10,000 on, and that's North Norris and State Road 77, which is the Pleasant Hill Highway. I've got several complaints up there in that intersection on the south side. If you ever pull up there going north and you try to cross that roadway and there's cars coming from the east and the west, and you try to do it in a hurry, it's very rough, and it makes it a very dangerous situation because you don't want to cross it because it's rough, and you still want to try to get away out of the traffic. And I've had a lot of people call me and say they've had a lot of close calls there. So we want to get that section paved. If you look, there is a map on the very back page that shows the area that will be repaved. It is the south side intersection to a certain point with new radiuses put in place. Any questions on any of the paving districts?
In District 1, of the 3 that we have listed, what's probably the worst one?
I believe Lakeview is the worst one we have right there.
Okay. Lakeview from Fairway Terrace north to
Yes,
Colonial?
if memory serves me right, that is the worst one at this time. And like I said, we will go from worst to best in that order and see see how far we can go. Because this is all just an approximation with the numbers that Kay Barnett gave me.
Okay. Okay, committee members, any questions, comments? Okay.
Good plan.
So in District 1, we have Lakeview from Fairway Terrace north to Colonial Parkway. District 2, we'll have Fifth Street from Prince to Axtell. District 3, Beta from Seventh to Deborah. And District 4, Lower from Manana to Eccles, is that correct?
Well, that will be the first, and if we have money left
Right.
over, then we'll go to the next
Right.
step, yeah.
So you need a recommendation for this committee to go ahead and move forward with these particular projects then, correct? Hello?
Thank you. Sorry, sidebar. Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioner and members of the committee. Yeah, so if you move forward with this list in the roadways that you first mentioned there, so Insdale, like you said, in District 1, then Fifth Street, Prince to Axtell in District 2, Beta, obviously in District 3, and then Lower from Manana to Eccles in District 4. We'll start with those roadways with that recommendation. Obviously, since District 3 didn't have any additional roadways listed here, then we'd skip back and start trying to fill in the gap if there's any remaining funds.
Right, okay.
In each one of those districts. And that's something, once we get hard prices on these, if there is additional funds still left over, we certainly could bring that back to the committee for a further recommendation to continue.
Okay, thank you, that's fine. So do we have a motion to move forward with a recommendation?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, move down to number 5, which is discussion and recommendation regarding flooding on Purdue and Cameo. Mr. Howald.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the committee. I'm going to try to not mess up sharing my screen here. And apparently I did.
No, the projector's not picking up the output.
So stop sharing?
Yeah, you can stop.
So it's not going to work? Okay, no problem then. I think everybody is familiar with the Purdue and Eccles area. So this is an area that is actually in our master drainage plan, and we actually get a lot of flooding on Purdue just west of Eccles Street. And it's a combination of, that's kind of like a,
Excuse me, west of Cameo, not,
west of Cameo, I'm sorry, thank you. Eccles is further west. And so Cameo is kind of a choke point for all those subdivision that flows into that area and trying to work its way down to Green Acres Park, or I'm sorry, to Dennis Chavez Park. I'm all over the place this morning. But like I said, it floods. There's some homes in there. The water actually does get really deep, and we've provided sandbags several times to some of these residential areas and neighbors. And what happens is, because the water is so deep in the roadways and spilling over into the front of the lawns, when people drive down through there, the actual wake of the water gets pushed up even further towards the homes. And obviously it's not a good situation for those particular homeowners. As I mentioned, it is in our master drainage plan. The construction cost, estimated construction cost at the time was around $900,000. But it's a project that we don't have any design for yet. And so what I would recommend is that, obviously that's step one, and using our drainage fund to go out and get a scope and fee from one of our consultants to put together a set of plans for us so that we could then have something to potentially go to construction and start looking for construction dollars for in the future. It is a project, like I said, that definitely needs to be done. We have other projects that we're looking for construction funds for. Obviously, they're going to be priority first, depending on where we can seek funding from, and then move forward with this project once we're able to establish those construction funds and where they potentially become from. But like I said, this very first step is getting it under design right now we have a very high level design, just estimated size of pipes, but to actually get construction drawings put together, which, like I said, would come out of our drainage funds. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
I was gonna say, I've had a lot of complaints there on Purdue and Cameo on that house that gets flooded all the time, and I get calls all the time on that. So does Helen Casaus, Commissioner Helen Casaus, and those people are, well, I don't blame them for complaining either. Because they've been flooded, their garage has been flooded, and we take out sandbags, and now they're getting older and they can't handle the sandbags like they could before. So I'd like to see it done.
Okay, so do we have this discussion and recommendation item also? So do we have a motion to move forward with this? Okay,
Second,
okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, discussion and recommendation regarding drainage at Ned Houck Park. Mr. Howald.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the committee. This is a project that actually Mr. Muse brought to our attention, and I didn't use technology on this one, and you have a handout in front of you. We actually experience a lot of flooding down CR 17 in these major rainstorms that we have. It's in the area of Ned Houck Park. And what happens, and you can see on there, kind of the black line on there is the drainage boundary for the dam area, and basically bleeds there from to the west, northwest, and to the southwest. And so what happens is you get a watershed that's coming across the area, and because of man, we've put in roads and diverted waters to where they naturally didn't go prior to the roadways going in. And so the DOT, when they built NM 209 there at CR 17, they actually have 5 culverts that go underneath 209 on the south side of CR 17. So that's diverting all that water from the southwest side of that intersection to the east. You can see on the map, it would have naturally continued on way and into running water draw. And so what we have proposed and are actually partnering with and working with the county on is that water's obviously been diverted to the south side of CR 17. We are looking to put in, where the blue lines are, new channels in that area. And so the county would install the culverts. The channels are actually on our property, and so we would put the channels in place to divert that water to where it doesn't end up down at the Motor Park Speedway and going down a large area there, but trying to reestablish those natural drainage patterns that existed prior to the roadways going in. The other thing that this would do is put the water back behind the dam where it was intended to go in the first place, and not have it going to the east side of the dam and continuing on downstream. The other channel that we would build is on the north side of Ned Houck Park. It's the blue line up on the kind of the middle of the page on the right-hand side. And so you can see there that that water has also been, from that drainage area, been diverted to the downstream side of the dam. And so what we would do is put a channel in. You can see where the contours start to form a V, which is showing where you have a lower spot in the topography. And so that would grade out and eventually daylight and send the water back behind the dam on that project as well. I visited with K Barnett on this project and got a price from them. They don't believe that it would exceed $55,000 for them to do this work for us. They had their surveyor kind of look at it. And so what I am proposing is that we move forward with a contract with them for not to exceed $55,000, and they would bill us on a time and materials basis only. And so what they would do is go out there with their blade, which is actually a 12-foot blade, so we'd make the ditch 12 feet. And that way we don't have to get any other pieces of equipment, try to limit the amount of equipment that's out there as possible. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding this project. And then if you so approve, we'll take it to the City Commission for final approval. Thank
Okay,
you, Mayor.
thank
Pro
you. Any comments from the committee?
I really think that's a great idea, and that will divert that into the lake there, or whatever you call it, and eventually we'll get into the aquifer and will help with our water situation. So I think it's a great idea, and I'd move for approval.
Second that.
Before I ask for a motion, for a vote, Mr. Muse, do you have any comments to make regarding this? I was gonna be real surprised if you said no.
I just want to thank you for looking at this and taking a look at it. We've been running water around the dam for 50 years, and it's just man-made mistakes. And finally, we have the county. I've been working on it 3 years, trying to talk everybody into it. And the county would say this, and the city would say this. They never got together. So on June 4th, we got together out there. And the county's in agreement. They'll put in whatever culverts are necessary to get that water into the dam. The Water Policy Committee has, 5 years ago, when we did our
Master
water
watershed
plan,
plan.
one of the 5 points in that was to encourage people to put as much water as they can, divert water to the playas so that we get recharge and help our aquifer. So I would encourage that. And the county is set to do their part in October so that it's timed with their the end of their chip sealing season, because they'll have to reseal their road when they get that done. So we need to be sure that we get the city's part done so they know where to put them. And even if we don't get all the blading done, we could at least take a backhoe out there and open the ditch and give the water a place to go. So Justin, thank you. Absolutely. And I look forward to seeing water on our side of the dam and not Texas. And sometime go out there to the entrance to the motor speedway and look where the water goes off there. I think it was 17 feet deep where it has washed through there. And on the north side, there's about 12 sections up there that drain. Am I about right on that?
I've never counted the number of sections.
I think it's about 12 sections of land that drain and have the potential to come down there. We might have a lake out there quite a bit of the time if we get it all diverted. The Soil Conservation Office tells me that there's sugar sand under that draw. And what would you estimate, 100-acre lake that we had this time?
Oh, I'm not going to estimate either.
Well,
There was water behind the dam.
That's my guess, that there's about 100-acre lake. Wasn't very deep, but it would probably cover 100 acres. And it was gone in about 10 days.
Wow.
And the gate is closed. I assure you the gate is closed, because I've been on both sides of it when it was 3 foot over the gate. And the gate holds good. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And the city of Clovis does have water rights for the run water draw dam.
Right.
And so we are allowed to store water behind that dam. We don't have to keep it open.
Okay,
And as a side note, excuse me, Chairman, as a side note, and like Justin said, it'll alleviate the flooding going towards the sports complex, and also probably prevent some flooding at our new shooting sports complex.
I was getting ready to bring that up as well, so thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to thank Mr. Muse for persevering on this. He's been talking about that for a long time. We've been missing him here at the commission meeting. You know, he used to be a frequent flyer here, I'll tell you what, but, thank you, Jack, for that. A great idea, and
Yeah.
thank all the city and the county for doing their part. But, it's a great deal. I appreciate it. Thank you.
And I agree.
I was,
Commissioner?
well, I'm okay with what we got. I was gonna ask a question, but, I'll go ahead and save my comment. You know, the old Moyer, the Game and Fish, one time he said that they were thinking about coming in there and lining that deal up so they could have a lake down there. But I don't know whatever came of that.
That would take a lot of material.
Yeah,
So I can't imagine them ever doing that. I've never heard, I've heard,
well,
I've never had
I was just
conversations, I've
talking,
just heard it.
I was just
but-
talking to him, you know, and he said that that he was thinking about that there would be a good idea to do that, to keep so we'd have a lake out there, but
Take a lot of material. That'd be a lot of clay to have to haul in there.
yeah, okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Okay. All right, we do have a motion on the floor and a second. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Jack. Okay, move down to number 7, which is a presentation regarding the FEMA flood plan study with Mr. Holwalt.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the committee. This is a project that the city of Clovis has been working on and partnered with Moles and Corbin, who's also actually working with Stantec, who are our consultants. It's funds that were allocated to us through a capital outlay appropriation a couple of legislative sessions ago. And what we have been doing is studying the FEMA floodplain. We've made improvements over the years. The modeling techniques have gotten a lot more sophisticated over time. We've got better survey information. And so we've come to the point in the process to where we are ready to submit to FEMA. However, before we did that, I wanted to give our consultants the opportunity to review with you and the viewing public what they have found. I mean, I think that you are going to be very pleasantly surprised on what these results are and allow them to give this presentation to you. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Kent Fryer, who is hopefully on the, I see him here, so hopefully we can hear him.
Let's try it. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, Kent. Thank you.
All right, good. So I'm gonna be brief because Zach has all the good magic that he'll be showing you. But as Justin said, this kind of started with the drainage master plan. We're gonna say a lot of Chinese words in the presentation. So you should have a handout that first of all describes a lot of the terms that we're going to be using, and primarily it's the FEMA flood zone. So I gave you a brief description of what a zone X is and what a zone A is and that sort of thing. And then I also kind of encapsulated in one page or maybe a page and a half where we were, how we got to this point, and some of the work that's yet to be done. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Zach Witten, our partners on this project. Zach and Ken Easterlinger with Stantec. They're a subcontractor to us, and they did the hydrologic modeling. Go ahead, Zach.
Thank you very much, Ken. I'm going to try to share my screen to help illustrate this stuff. Fingers are crossed that this works as intended. Let me know if it does not. I see. Just let me share my screen. Okay. All right.
Very good.
All right, so you're able to see my the map of the Clovis right now?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so what you're looking at right now is what the current floodplains in the city of Clovis look like. This is part of the NFIP program, the FEMA flood insurance special floods and hazard area maps. So as you can see from here, this illustrates a lot of flooding down here to the south, a decent amount on here in the northeast drain, and then Thomas Ditch 2 having a bit of flooding that comes through here. Now these maps, now I'm going to try really hard, as Kent said, not to say too many words that don't make much sense, but as you'll see as I get through this, I get a little excited about this stuff, the nerd in me comes out, and I'll try really hard to make sure what I say is not too nerdy, I guess. But one of the things that was happening when these maps were made was you had to do these things called cross sections to be able to understand the flooding. You know, water goes from this cross section to this cross section to that cross section, and as soon as that flow is going in a lateral direction, one direction. And the problem with that is, as you're well aware, in Clovis, water doesn't just go in one direction. You know, the terrain says it can go down one street, go down the other, flow in a bunch of different directions. And so the old traditional ways of doing this, with the less sophisticated modeling techniques, wasn't able to capture this unique way of water flowing. You know, it worked well for like Mississippi River, but not City of Clovis. And another thing that happened was very recently, very high resolution terrain came in. FEMA and USGS came out with the quality level 2, QL2 LiDAR data, which is really sophisticated amount of terrain data. So it really captured what the terrain was like in this area, the elevations. So what we were able to do was to take those numbers and essentially simulate a storm. And so I will kind of show that real fast. So this is Clovis. And what we were able to do was we were able to take that terrain, take this sophisticated model, which essentially breaks the world down into these small grids. Essentially it's saying like every 20-foot area is its own grid. So it just breaks this world into little pieces and allows water to go all over those pieces. And what you see from that, and I'll try to let it simulate it, you see the water start to build up. You see this big wave of water coming in as the major part of the storm hits. But as you can see from this as it starts, is water's going not just in uniform directions. It's coming down here, it's coming through here, it's coming down these streets, it's going down that street. Water isn't acting uniform, and that's just not the way it happens in the city of Clovis. You can zoom into some of these areas and see just how well this is occurring or simulating these things. You can turn on what they call particle tracers, and it shows you what water is doing in these areas, right? You see it coming down here, making this turn. Some of it's coming, there's a lot of buildup of water from the rain, water coming through here. There's a lot of different things occurring in this area that this model's able to pick up on. So to kind of show you what that's, quickly go through again what those simulations look like. You know, just kind of going through here, seeing the buildup of rain, going back, buildup of rain. You see a big rush of wave come in. And then essentially what the model does is show you what this maximum water surface elevation is. Now, potentially a scary map here, right? Because it shows water everywhere. But when a rainfall happens, that's what occurs, right? I mean, when it rains, you're going to get a little bit of water in backyards. It happens in my backyard. You're going to get water coming down the roads like this, right? You're showing a half a foot of flooding down this road here. You got, half a foot of water coming down here. But that's not necessarily floodplain. You know, just because it's rain on the roads doesn't mean it's simulating a storm. Was to figure out, okay, using this information, what does a floodplain look like? So that's the next part of this, was to take the information, again, it's the maximum water surface elevations in the area, and then turn them into what should be the floodplain for the area, and this is what we're looking at here. A bit of a drastic difference in the area. So what you're seeing here is red is the zone AE. This is the detailed zone AE within the 100-year floodplain. The purple is the zone AH, which is the playas in the area, the pond in the area, and then black is the zone X shaded, which essentially is saying that yes, there is a flood hazard in this area, but it's not necessarily warranted enough to have flood insurance. It's less than 1 foot of flooding during the 100-year event. And again, if we kind of turn on those effective floodplains again real fast, see where those are, turn that off and see this. What you see is there's a bit of a difference in what that floodplain looks like. The most obvious one is the west second drain here. As you can see from the existing, it was coming up here, coming along this area. But again, if you take the look at the maximum flood depths in these areas, the floodplains aren't really supported by the flood depths. You know, it's just because it's coming down the road here doesn't mean that there should be there's flooding going on. And you see a little bit of depth here, a little bit of depth there. But again, that's flooding that's occurring from just rainfall occurring. You know, again, water's in my backyard whenever it rains, but there's not a floodplain back there. It's just that it's just rain that fell in my backyard. So that was a pretty big difference that we saw in this area here. Another one that we saw was a really big difference was the was the Thomas Ditch 2. Essentially, with the current floodplains right now, are suggesting that water comes out of the playa and flows right through this neighborhood right here. But with our simulation of a storm, what it told us was that the playa takes up most of the flow, takes up most of this area. It does not allow water to get out. And it does a little bit and it spills out a little bit, but not enough to, in my opinion, say that this area should be in a floodplain. And so one of the things that we are going to submit to FEMA is that this should not be a zone AE, but a zone X shaded. Again, stating the fact that there is a potential for flood risk here, but it's not as intimate and as it's as a zone AE would refer to. So Thomas Ditch 2 was a major difference, right? Was a major difference there, kind of showing you what that looks like there. Another one is this area over here coming down this road. Again, water is coming down from the playa down the west or northeast drain. But as again, when you get into this area, there isn't as much flooding going on in the neighborhood. A little bit of flooding in the backyards again, but nothing that's it's just kind of flowing down these streets. Yes, there is, as the model will show, let me turn that on. There are, about a foot and a half of water flowing down there, but it's not getting into houses, essentially what the model is telling us. And then lastly, one of the bigger differences that we saw was this area here, where you're seeing the effective floodplains was that this area floodplain kind of went up into this neighborhood here, spilled out and came over here. But our simulation kind of illustrated that essentially it was kind of contained into this playa right here, and the breakout was more down this way over here. Again, it's shallow, less than a foot, so we're considering this as zone X shaded. So again, so in short, the reasons why these maps potentially look so different once we get FEMA's approval is the fact that we have a different modeling technique. Again, it's not looking at the world in one segments at a time. It's looking at the models in grids, which is a revolutionary type of way of looking at things. It's very new and very sophisticated modeling. And plus the terrain that we have now, this new LiDAR from FEMA and USGS, is very high quality stuff. I believe that the stated accuracy on a horizontal is 6 centimeters, which that's pretty good. So that's essentially what we have so far for here, is this looking at the new maps, looking at the new way these models, this new terrain data can do. Again, I'm just trying really hard not to use the nerdy terms that I typically use and like to use, but I'm sure I said some things that don't make sense and I could use more explanations. I will open it up to anyone here who has a question. I'd gladly answer it for them here.
Any questions?
Zach, about what percentage of the floodplain was reduced?
Acreage wise, about half.
Wow.
According to this, so I will say, when you submit to FEMA, they always have their comments. And so as of right now, we believe we have the best thing here. It's going to be about half of the acreage is reduced. A lot of it is coming from that west second drain, and a lot of it's coming from the fact that the Thomas Ditch should not be modeled. There's a couple things I'll caveat with that, is that so again, just the engineer and me, until things get approved, it's not there. So it's just want to say we believe we have the best modeling here, where we have a very long report stating why that is. We're confident that when we send this to FEMA, we're going to get that result. But until FEMA says they give the thumbs up, they could come back and say we want you to tweak this, tweak that, which could increase flooding area. But as of right now, it's about half the acreage of the floodplain was reduced by this modeling.
And if I could add something to that, Justin, one of the things we discussed before is there could be even some additional areas taken out. One of the oddities of the FEMA floodplain is you could have a flood hazard boundary just clip the corner of your lot, just clip the corner. And so therefore your lot is required to have floodplain insurance. From that point, what a homeowner can do is get an elevation certificate to show that their house, their foundation is actually above that floodplain, and so there could be some areas here and there or individual lots that are also then taken out of the requirement for flood insurance. Correct, Zach?
That, yeah, there's a process for that, the elevation certificates, yes.
Are you required to get an elevation certificate if you're inside of the floodplain, or is that something that you so choose to do as an individual homeowner?
You can choose that, so I mean, if you feel like you're in a floodplain, you feel like you want the insurance, you could keep that, the elevation certificate is, an option for you.
Thank you. And can you further explain the area east of the Ingram Channel and how that still shows flooding east of there, even though we have a very large channel going through that area?
So yeah, this area, there's a large channel going through here. There's just a lot going on in this area. You have the flow coming in from the west to the east. You have the flow going down the channel, and you have flow just kind of coming in this area right here again. So if you kind of show this simulation in motion, as I try to get back the normal time, see it coming. There we go. What you see is it just gets overwhelmed by this intensity of the storm, which I believe we've seen this type of intensity before in the city of Clovis. 2015 had about 4.5 inches of rain. When this kind of intensity occurs, depending on where it happens, just the systems aren't intended to essentially convey that much. And then the ground is just kind of flat here. So what you see is the water rushes through here, the water rushes down the channel, the water rushes on, essentially coming from this large area right here. And it just kind of culminates into this perfect storm, no pun intended with this, of a situation that causes water to overflow into this area and kind of just sit there. There's kind of a low area right here. So once it gets out, it's kind of slow, and it just kind of sits.
So, based off the results, and as we think about our floodplain and trying to continue to make improvements, drainage improvements throughout our community that would potentially reduce the floodplain even more, is it fair to say that we're limited because of the US 6084, the highway as well as the railroad, and to actually try to eliminate would be us potentially trying to get more crossings in underneath those two, the roadway and the railroad?
It's a difficult answer because it would kind of allude to there's one problem, or I don't want to say a problem, but there's one constraint. The issue here is a combination of things. It's the combination of potentially what the intensity of the storm could be, the potential of water getting through in this area, and the potential for just the combination of water. So it's kind of, there's so many different ways that water's building here. Yes, increasing that capacity right there, allowing this to not back up, and having to flow through here would be an improvement, but the fact that there's just such an intense storm that kind of falls into this area, just point to potentially one constraint being the cause would be difficult. The model could look into this and see what improvements we could make, but yeah, there's kind of it's just kind of like, again, the perfect storm is kind of occurring in this area right here with how you have the west second drain, the northeast drain, the northwest drain, all kind of coming together at one spot.
And as I think about the area through town and trying to redevelop some of the areas west of here, of Ingram Channel and throughout our community, and with a lot of that being in the floodplain, and obviously property owners having to have flood insurance, makes it potentially a less attractive area to develop within. And so as well as with the increased insurance rate, just making it almost unaffordable for some people to be in those particular areas. And so going to the west, I know that to the west of Prince Street, the DOT is going to be doing a major road project that includes lots of storm drainage improvements. Are those storm drainage improvements that are underground taken into consideration for road or for water that's no longer actually being conveyed within the streets, but conveyed within a pipe underground?
So when these types of maps get put together, it's like the 100-year event, and one of the things that's a common assumption is that those storm drains aren't designed for the 100 year. Most of the time, it's just not economical to put in that large of a pipe for potentially one storm every 100 years. You know, that 1% storm. So a lot of times, what happens with storm drains for this type of area is they just get so overwhelmed. We've seen it a ton here in Arizona. We've seen it in parts of New Mexico, where that storm intensity comes in. It fills up the storm drains. They're clogged. They're not accepting hardly any more water, if any at all. And then when that storm surge comes, like, you know, once you see that big, intense part of the storm hit during this 100-year event, you know, it just goes right over top. It doesn't even see the storm drain. It's just flowing right over top of it, through it, as if it doesn't exist. And so it's a pretty common assumption that you don't take into account the storm drains unless they're designed for a 100-year. But typically they're designed for about a 2 to 10 year, depending on your region. And it just can't handle such the magnitude difference between a 10 and a 100-year event is huge. You're going from about 2 or some inches of rain to 5 inches of rain between the 10 and 100 year, which is just, you know, more than double.
And Zach, the other thing that, if you don't mind expanding upon, is the way FEMA requires us to model the storms as if they're over their entire drainage area all at one time, whereas reality, we typically do not see storms that cover that entire basin all at one time.
That's a great point. One of the assumptions that you have to make when you do this type of storm modeling is that you have this giant uniform storm. I believe, again, that 2015 storm is a great example when 4.5 inches of rain fell on the north side or the northwest side, but you didn't see it everywhere. The issue is that when you do these storms, you have to make the assumption that it's this giant storm that rolls in, goes over the entire area, the entire watershed, and anything that contributes hydrologically to that location needs to be modeled. So we did have to take this model way up north up here and assume that the rainfall is occurring all the way down here. Again, so that you know, for the 100 year, that 5.5 inches of rain that occurs in Clovis, we have to assume it's also occurring over here, and we get this giant event that occurs where you get all this flow coming down through here, gets through and into the town. That's just a required FEMA assumption, because you're essentially, what you're saying with the your localized storm is that you can predict where that intense storm is going to occur. You go, oh, nope, it's going to happen right here. It's not going to happen right there. Which in reality, we don't know where that's going to occur. It's going, it's that pocket, that monsoon can happen anywhere. So the FEMA regulation is what happens if it's that worst case scenario where it flow or dumps on top of that entire watershed.
Thank you. And then I guess my last final question is, in the past, we've had to model the playas as if they started at a certain percentage full at the beginning of the event. How did we address those in this particular model?
So for this particular model, there was some good correspondence that we received from FEMA. Kent was able to get in contact with the region, get us some good guidance, and essentially there's a lot of guidance out there about impoundment areas, storage areas, reservoirs, dams, and this is natural. And so it used to be in this region you would model these as 25% full, which when you have areas that are, these playas that are 11 feet deep, 15 feet deep, 10 feet deep, that's a lot of storage that you're losing to water just sitting there, which, as I'm sure you guys are well aware, when these storms occur, they're not filled with water. So the new guidance that Kent was able to pull for us shows that, FEMA was not going to allow us to, was going to allow us to model this as empty when the storm started. So essentially these plazas will start empty, they'll start to fill, and then by the time the intensity comes, there's no starting water surface elevation. It's only being filled by the storm that's leading up to the peak event.
Okay, thank you. Very good presentation. There's probably some people out there listening to this, to all this that's going on and possibly in the flood areas. What's the next process with this plan? I mean, is it submitted to FEMA? And if so, how, what kind of timeline are we looking at? And, where do we go from here?
So I'm sure FEMA's not the only federal agency like this, but so the next steps is to submit to FEMA. We gotta get some signatures, get some additional items to get submitted, submit that to FEMA, and then they go to a review period. I'd love to tell you that it goes fast. Being a part of it on the other end, they are not the fastest moving agency. In some ways they are, some ways they aren't, and unfortunately with the MT2 process, it could literally depend on what their availability is. Are their reviewers busy? Are they not busy? I'd love to be able to give you a date or a timeline, but I have been on both ends. I've got comments back right away. I've had to knock on FEMA's door a few times and say, hey, where are these at? So I'd love to be able to give you an answer as to how long that timeline is, but unfortunately, they are not the quickest at reviews.
Yeah, I think we've kind of figured that one out. You did mention the elevation permit. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
I'll pass that one over to Kent.
Hunt. As I mentioned before, if you own a lot in a home and part of the floodplain is on your property, and so you're required to get floodplain insurance, but you don't believe it's right, what you can do is get a surveyor, and your floodplain administrator there in Clovis would be able to guide a homeowner in this. But you would get a surveyor and survey your lot and demonstrate on that elevation certificate that your finished floor is in fact a foot above or above or at the base flood elevation, but primarily above. And you can then make a submission to FEMA to where your requirement for floodplain insurance is no longer required. So that would get you out of a floodplain and the requirement for buying your insurance. So it's a pretty simple certificate that the surveyor just puts the elevations in and send it off to FEMA.
And there's another side benefit along with that as well. So if your property is within the 100-year floodplain, and your house, your domicile is actually above the 100-year floodplain, you can once again do that floodplain certificate. And if you choose to have flood insurance, it actually will give you a discounted rate. So you get a better rate on there if you want to actually have flood insurance. But it also then, so it gives the homeowner options, and that's one thing about this this model that we've created is that it has elevations assigned to it everywhere on the map. So it's very easy for the surveyor and the floodplain administrator to say, yep, this house is supposed to be the floodplain at this point is so many feet, 20 inches. And they go out and survey it and shows that you're a foot above, then your house is out. So this will be really good for everybody involved. Once it gets approved, which is anywhere between 18 and 24 months, 18 and 36 months, ish.
It could be quicker. Sometimes I've had it be a review in like 90 days. And then there's a little bit of process to get it into the maps. But, I've been a part of 90 days. I've been a part of 2 years. So it depends on so many different things, such as who gets the review and how long it takes for them to get through it. So
we're trying. Once we get it submitted, we will lean on them as best we can. We'll just like that.
Okay, thank you. Good, Mr. Howald, do you have another comment?
I was just gonna, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
So from a continued improvement standpoint, just because we're submitting to this, to FEMA now, if we made some improvement in the future, created greater capacity within a channel or bermed something up to where it no longer spilled over, nothing prevents us from submitting just that particular area in the future, correct?
Correct. So once you kind of have this model approved, it essentially can become like a living model. You could take this model, show some improvements to it, see what those results change, and essentially do the process over again for a particular area. So that is that's one of the beauties of this type of model, is that it could be a living model.
But nothing prevents us from doing a smaller submission to FEMA in the future for just a particular area.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee members? No? Very good presentation. Thank both of you for being here today. We appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll move down to update on current projects, and we'll move to the city update with Mr. Howald and Mr. Bunch.
Thank you, Chairman, and members of the committee. Just a few things to go over. I'm going to go over each division that we have in Public Works and kind of give an overview of everything we're doing. But I'd like to start off by saying that, as you all know, the way the economy is and the way the COVID situation is right now, it's affecting Public Works as much as anybody, anywhere. At this time, Public Works is down 15 to 18 employees at all times. Basically, we're supposed to have approximately 84 employees, and we're down to about 60 and below 60 a lot of times. I won't name the name of the fast food restaurant, but there's a new fast food restaurant in town. When I went there the other day, I counted 62 employees in the fast food restaurant. I knew they were doing some training and other things, but one fast food restaurant has as many employees in it at one time as I have it for all of Public Works. So the guys at work that we do have, our loyal employers, are doing the best they can, and they're doing a great job keeping up with everything. I'll start with the wastewater division. One of the big projects, right now we're in a test phase for the reuse tower. Justin may go over that a little bit more in detail. Right now we're running water to the tower. We're testing the system, making sure everything's up in order. And once we sign off on that, then that project will be completed. Mark Hill, the new wastewater superintendent out at the plant, he had some nitrogen issues at the plant. We were experiencing high nitrogen numbers. I'm not going to go into the details, but we have a level that we have to comply with by the state, and we were just slightly above that number for a couple of tests, and we have to report that to the state. After doing some investigation, Mr. Hill found out that our oxygen diffusion in the aeration basins was a little bit off. So he tried some different ideas. He's pretty good minded when it comes to that, pretty technical. He came up with some solutions, and now we've got our numbers well below the number that we need to comply. He moved the air in a couple different places, and it's all technical, but what he did worked out really well. So I'm very proud of what he did on that. And so our numbers are great on nitrogen right now, and the plant's running well. At this time, at the wastewater plant, we're in the process of installing, purchasing and installing some MaxiVolt system, which is a surge suppression system. Out there at the plant, we use Farmers Electric power, and a lot of times Farmers Electric, it does go down, and we do get what you call dirty power or low voltage. This system that we're putting in, that we've got through capital outlay money from the city, will help with the plant not going down and help our electronics problems we have out there with our computers and with our actual motor systems out there, because as you know, high voltage can blow up a motor and low voltage can blow up a motor. So this system will help prevent that. So it costs a little bit now, but it's going to save us a lot of money and a lot of overtime in the future. Town crew going about their daily business. We've got a few new subdivisions in town, and when a subdivision comes in, the contractor has a plumber put in the new sewer lines. So after they're completed, We have to go in there and camera those lines and make sure those lines meet our specifications, make sure there's no low areas or no separations in the pipe, and we've been doing that on a couple of those areas lately. We've been working on the design locates for a couple of these new projects, like the 6084 project. We're having to do design locates, engineers show them where our sewer line is and let them know that, you know, how and where we want them to be moved to also. So that's about everything in wastewater. Street department, they're going about their business. They've had a lot of problems with water on the roadways with the rains that we've had. They've been doing a lot of patching. They've had to do a lot of areas where they had to cut out areas of streets and hot mix patch those back in. The areas that they did sure are holding up a lot better, keeping the tort claims down and keeping the streets drivable. The last couple months, the street department's also tore down 12 dilapidated houses for the inspections department. We partner with them. They, you know, condemn a house, get all the paperwork done, and then when it's time, we'll go in there and demo that house and haul it all to the landfill and make it a nice looking property again. They've been working on that. They've also did a lot of weed spraying, herbicide spraying all over town, and a lot of weed control in curb and gutters. Been doing that, you know, at a large rate recently. The traffic division, they've been very busy themselves. One thing they've done is they've installed a Carmona radar sign with speed readout and red-blue flashing lights on East 21st. I don't know if you've seen it coming into town from the Texaco side up 21st. You're coming into town, and we've got a new radar sign that shows your speed, and if you're going too fast, it'll warn you. We've had a few accidents at that Norris and 21st intersections, so we thought it would be best to give a pre-warning. We already have one pre-warning sign, but this is another one to kind of let people know that you're coming into town, it's time to slow down. We've also, in that department, they pulled wire for preemption verification lights at Prince and Brady, 14th and Main, 14th and Thornton, and Mabry and Norris. We've also changed out IntelliController with a new M60 series cabinet, and that's at the Marshall Middle School. That's the signal there that's activated by pedestrians when they push the button to walk across there. It's not at full time, but it's only as needed basis. So we put in a new system there. The old system was getting aged, and we were having some electrical problems with it, so it's all new insides now. A couple of big things that the traffic department worked on is they worked with Xcel Energy at a couple intersections. One was with Manana and Prince, and the other one was 21st and Mitchell. Both of those intersections, we have new equipment in, and very sensitive equipment. And we were having low voltage problems at both of those intersections. So Kevin Music, the traffic superintendent, he got with Xcel, and we kind of studied the situation and found out that there was low voltage at those intersections at certain times of the day. And that's caused by the transformer on the poles not being at the right size. And as soon as, let's say, the day heated up above 90 degrees, people started using their air conditioners in the neighborhood, and it dropped the voltage at those intersections to a point where our new equipment was saying, we can't do that. We got to shut off. We got to go into flash, because if we keep running at this low voltage, we'll burn up. So we got with Xcel Energy. They partnered with us, and at their expense, they put new transformers at those intersections. So now we have at least 120 volts full time at those intersections. So it's helped out immensely. As I said, we've pulled wire all over town also. We've also installed a new video detection system at 7th and Thornton for that new project. I guess you saw that it was opened up yesterday.
That is complete, thank you.
Yes, and what I hear, the detection system's working very well. It's very sensitive, it picks up every vehicle. It's a new technology, so we hope it works until we can get the whole new signal system up there. But at this time, it seems to be working well.
Good.
Sanitation department, as I've said earlier about manpower, sanitation is one of the main areas where we're lacking manpower. And that's because sanitation drivers are required to have a CDL license. At one time here, we have 11 routes for sanitation trucks, and we have 11 drivers only. So if somebody has to go on COVID protocol, or they're sick, or their spouse is sick and they take off, we have 11 drivers, we have 11 routes, so it's impossible to get that route completed that day. So we have to use our Wednesday, which is our middle day, and we have to make up those days at that time. It's been a struggle. We have got 4 new CDL drivers at this time that are training, so it will help out once we get those people trained up and they know the routes. It'll help. But those people we pulled that got CDLs, we pulled them from the LEO positions, so that leaves less people now to pick up alleys. So that's a problem you have, is anytime somebody promotes, you're losing somebody from the bottom. And it's harder and harder. I know there's many business people up here. I see a lot of business owners. You guys know it's hard to find good help right now. There's a lot of people don't want to work. There's a lot of people that aren't qualified to work when they do come in. On that note of cleaning alleys, at this time, a month ago, we were over 500 calls down on alley cleanups. That means people call in to our department and say, we have branches behind my house, we need somebody to come and pick them up. I requested with Mr. Howalt for overtime hours. At that time, Mr. Howalt granted that I could use volunteer people in Public Works for overtime hours to help clean up the alleys. Since that time, which was basically 5 weeks ago now, we went from over 500 calls, and as of today, we'll be under 100 calls short. So it has helped getting volunteers to come in, and it sure did help with the call volume we've been getting at Public Works. So we're going to try to get caught up, try to get new employees in, and try to stay caught up. But it's an ongoing process that everybody's going through right now, and we're doing the best we can. But it sure did make a difference to let these guys that will work extra hours. At this time, we have several volunteers that are working from 6 to 6 every day. So it has helped out. We are going to go through the rest of this week with that, and then we're going to cut that off for a time and see how we can hold up with the crews we have on hand.
Clinton, if I can just ask a question regarding the alleys. Your crew is doing a great job with that. I'm getting fewer calls than what I did before. So I know it's progressing and it's working. Do you have any suggestions as how we can possibly control any of that, as far as, reoccurring?
Right. At this time, we're working with Kelsey Knight, our grant coordinator, and I'll call her my filmographer. We're working with her right now. We actually did some videos yesterday for public information of kind of explaining to people what you can do and what you can't do in your alley, what people are responsible for and what we're responsible for, and kind of give the public some information. She's going to put these videos out on Facebook and kind of explain, that we're trying to help you people. We didn't put the stuff in the alley. We're just the ones trying to help you pick it up. So don't get mad at us whenever there's stuff in your alley. Like I said, we've always wanted people to take things to the landfill, and that's one of the videos is going to explain to them. It's free of charge. If you're a city resident, take it to the landfill. If you got that new washer and dryer to your house, you can get the old one to the landfill, And we understand their situations, and we hear it all the time that, well, I don't have a vehicle. We make accommodations for that. But if we can get a certain percentage of the public to comply, it sure would help out with us. And that's what we're starting with public information right now.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And you're talking about large items in the dumpster. I actually got a call from a lady just a couple of days ago, and somebody had put a refrigerator inside the dumpster.
Golly.
And
we've seen it all.
Sanitation came by and actually dumped it.
Yep.
But, as you say, the landfill is free to city residents, and if they don't have a way to get there, all they need to do is make a phone call to the city and we can take care of that. But it just doesn't happen sometimes, unfortunately.
Right, and for everybody's hearing information, when I said over 500 calls,
Yes.
when we take a call, let's say it's behind one of your residents, you call and say you have some limbs behind your house. When we do that call, we pick up your limbs and we do that whole block
Right.
at that time. So when we're talking about 500 calls, we've been doing 500 blocks at a time is what we've been doing the last 5 weeks. So it's not just picking up branch or two. It's doing the whole alley when we do it. So it try to keep the alleys as clean as possible.
Well, like I say, I know your crew's doing a great job, and we appreciate it. Mr. Howalt, thank you for allowing the overtime to make that happen.
I don't want the calls.
Well, it only makes sense to me to pay the people that will work.
That's right.
The ones that will work, let's pay them because they will work and
That's
they'll
right.
get the job done.
And Commissioner Madrid, I believe you have a question?
Yes, I want to thank your Department of Sanitation Department for taking care of that alley on Ruth. Those people were really grateful that you guys took care of it because they were having problems.
Oh, the street department? Yeah, the street department did that alley.
Oh, did they?
That's who does the actual streets and alleys. They resurfaced that. The material they put in the first time, after it rained right after they put it in, and it turned kind of into a mush. They
mushy.
took that back out. We put actual millings that we had on hand, we put those in there to keep that from having a trip hazard for that handicapped person that goes out there to the trash can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for what you guys did.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, going to the next department, landfill, as we said, it's free of charge for people to take stuff to the landfill, so the landfill's been busy also. Very busy with the rains. As you know, when it rains, it makes a muddy mess out there, and it takes a lot of work from the crews out there to make it passable because we can't shut down. We got to have the landfill open. You got to go. There's no stopping. If you stop the landfill, the whole process stops. At this time, we're also out there. We're also working on a partial closure of cells 1 through 4. What that is we had 4 cells out there that we've been using existing at the landfill, and cell 4 is just about full. So once it's full, we'll start the closure process of cells 1 through 3 and keep part of cell 4 open because we still have a C and D landfill on top of it and to the side of that we use for C and D that we can go ahead and go higher with. We're going to start using cell 5. I don't know if anybody's been out at the landfill, but we have a huge new cell that we've had constructed a couple years ago. That's a 20-year cell. It's a huge lined area that's going to take care of the residents for our time here. I can say that, so we don't have to worry about that for many years. Also, with all the rains, the landfill's been busy fixing slopes on the existing landfill. You get washout areas from the rain, so they have to keep that. They have to grade that and put new material in those areas because of runoff. We don't want erosion to get back into the existing parts of the landfill and wash trash out underneath that dirt. Shop department. Shop department doesn't have any big projects. The shop department that works for Public Works pretty much does vehicle services on all city vehicles except for the fire department, and we even do fire department sometimes, but a lot of theirs is contracted out. But we do the police department, we do all of our sanitation trucks, all of our vehicles in the city, all of our heavy equipment at the landfill is all taken care of by the shop department. They've been very busy trying to keep us going. With the way the economy is and with the amount of money, they're more important than ever to keep things running, the older equipment running, because we can't just go buy a new piece of equipment every time we want to. There's only so many funds to go around. So that's kind of an overview of everything that's going on at Public Works.
That's quite a bit. Any questions? No? Mr. Howalt, turn it over to you, if there's anything left.
I'll hit a couple of highlights here. And one of them refers back to the placing items next to dumpsters. Part of what we're doing is going through the entire municipal code for the city of Clovis, and we'll be working with each one of the departments for their various sections in the code that affects them. And one of those sections is obviously the Public Works, and our requirement or ask of citizens now is to place large items next to the containers in the alleys. Well, that's fine and good for the person that's placing that item there. We also receive a lot of calls from the people that have the container sitting behind their house that now have a lot of large items directly behind their house, or people putting things on their fences, et cetera. So that is something that we're going to consider is how do we address this, from a code standpoint? Should we be doing something different when it comes to that particular item? So that is something that we'll be looking at in the future and continue to work on how we address our alley situations throughout the community. In regards to the 7th Street project, That's the project that goes from Maple Street West to Main Street, a continuation of the last phase. The DOT District 2 did submit it to the State Transportation Committee for consideration as one of their top projects to fund. And so the State Transportation Committee actually meets on the 26th for consideration. So hopefully following that meeting, we'll hear good news that they have selected our project to receive transportation project funds that was recently created through the state legislature for municipalities. So that would fund that project in its entirety to get it all the way to Main Street, which is upward near, I want to say, $5.9 million that we asked for that particular project. Martin Luther King, we did have our public meeting since the last Public Works Committee meeting met, and we had a fantastic turnout for one of our public meetings. We had about 7 people there, and so that's one of our better turnouts. And the consultant gave a great presentation, heard some good feedback, and so we've finalized those plans and or are finalizing those plans. And now looking for construction funding. Senator Lujan was actually in town, in which Mayor Pro Tem Bryant and Commissioner Madrid had an opportunity to attend that meeting with him, and of course advocated trying to receive direct appropriations to for funds to construct Martin Luther King. That's around a $6 million project as it currently stands. As Clint mentioned, the improvements at 7th and Thornton have been completed, so it's a long overdue. We've been battling that signal for years with the rutting that we've experienced in that area, so I'm sure Kevin is ecstatic that he'll no longer have to attend to that one as often as he did. And then finally, just to hit real quickly on the reuse project in Phase 2, which is the transmission line portion of the project. We're extending from basically 21st Street up to the backside into the back 9 ponds of Colonial Park Golf Course. The contractor has been out there. He started doing his potholing. We still have not received pipe for the project. You've heard me say it before, there's just been a supply chain issue receiving PVC pipe. We were originally scheduled to receive it between mid-July and mid-August. Well, we're coming to the end of August and we still have not received that pipe yet. So we'll just continue to, unfortunately, have to slide that schedule. It's at no fault to the contractor that he can't get started. However, during their potholing along Wilhite in between Thornton and Prince Street, we had designed the pipeline to go on the north side of Wilhite. In between our design and actually construction now, communications companies have come in there and placed fiber where we had decided to originally was an open space for us to put our pipe. This happens. They don't ask where we want them to go, and they just put their lines in. And so now we're having to address that and try to figure out where we can put our pipe in for our reuse project. An option may just be to tell the communications companies that they get to move, but we'll look at the schedule and see what the impact is overall. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, I do have a couple. Back to the alleys a minute. We have 2 times per year that we do a cleanup campaign. Is it possible that we can possibly add alleys to our cleanup campaign?
We have done that, but in the past, sorry to interrupt, but we have done that in the past. If we get a large manpower from the Kennedy Air Force Base, a lot of big, strong guys, we have put them in alleys before. We put them with flatbeds and alleys, and them guys go to town. They can throw the couches in and wash machines or whatever else, so it has been done in the past.
Okay. The other thing, I know we're doing a lot of social media talk on alleys, but what about on the billing statements that go out to residents? Can we add something onto those that maybe talk a little bit about large items and dumpsters and things like that?
Yeah, certainly. That's something we can absolutely do.
Yeah, I will say we have tried that before. I'll say I get a bill just like everybody else does. I look at the number that I owe. I never look at anything else. I don't myself. So I know a lot of people are like me, that it kind of is just white noise.
Right.
But we've thought about that also, yes.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Madrid.
I talked to Commissioner Casals yesterday, and she brought up 916 Purdue again. And that house looks pretty bad.
And that's something that we're working with our building safety division on. They were out there, they've started the violation process again for the weeds. And so I know that's ongoing. I know that our attorney has reached out to the bank to see if they're going to start foreclosure. Obviously, through COVID, there was a moratorium on being able to evict people out of places. And then when it comes to the structural, if whether or not the house is able to be lived in, our building safety department is also looking at that. Just from the photos that we see currently, I mean, yes, it is definitely a nuisance. Is it something that the city of Clovis could come in there and condemn and demo? I don't see it, because a window is broken. That doesn't make a house worth being able to condemn and demo. And so I think we could get ourselves into some issues if we move forward with that potential. But we're definitely working on with the nuisance as well as trying to get the property owner to comply.
Yeah, I think the weeds are kind of bad. I looked at them today when I was coming by there. And then they're having, I think those people go through the alleys and pick up a lot of trash. And they have it there in the front yard, where I don't know what people do there. I guess people come in there and they either sell it or give it away or whatever. But I don't know what they're doing. But I think there's other people that come through the alleys and pick up all this stuff.
Yeah, and definitely our head code enforcement officer was out there yesterday posting notices again for violations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else? No? Mr. Holwell, Mr. Bunch, thank you for a good update. And Mr. Bunch, please let your crew know that we appreciate all they do for the city and their citizens. Okay, John King with Close Middle Schools, and he's not here today. Move down to the review of the order. And do we have any public input? If you'll give us your name and address for the record, please.
Sure, Danny Twyman, 3413 North Glen. I spoke with you guys a couple days ago at the commission meeting, and I'm just going to reiterate the same point that I brought up a couple days ago, but for the members that weren't there, Yana Estacada, eastbound of the roundabout, I was just trying to advocate for some attention to that particular roadway.
About east of the roundabout, correct?
East of the roundabout, yes, yes, sir. So, just trying to advocate for my community on trying to get that put on the docket and prioritized correctly of the safety concerns that I've noticed out there. It's just a two-lane road with no shoulders, no curbs, no sidewalks, zero lighting out there. And so you already spoke to it that there is some sort of rack and stack order that it's in there. I'm just not sure where. And to be honest, I just wanted to come to the meeting and kind of see where we're talking about with stuff like that. And so I know that in my community we have a lot of kids around that area that you know, when they travel down that road, or if they're running down that road, they're actually in the lane with vehicles, right? So there's really nowhere for them to go. And so once again, it's kind of the thing I wanted to bring up, but I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much, sir.
Sure, thank you, thank you. As you can see and hear, we've got a lot of road projects going on, a lot of street projects, and you know, we're always concerned about lighting, not only for, mainly for safety of our pedestrians and citizens and cars and things, but we are working on some possible ideas of street lighting for the future, and so yeah, we'll take a look at that area and see where it goes.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're still under for the good of the order. Anybody have anything else? No? All right, our next meeting date is set for 8:30 a.m., September 22nd. And with that, we are adjourned.